Hello and welcome to Spyhards podcast, the best spy movie podcast this side of the Berlin Wall. I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur. And Scott, if you love Jesus, blow your horn.
Honk honk.
That's right.
I don't have a horn, I just make that noise randomly at times.
Well, you do carry around one of those, boat horns just to, surprise people randomly, and it's really obnoxious. But in this case, you're just making that noise.
I also use it to distract cyclists. Awooga! And they go, oh! And they spiral off into safely into a grassy area. They don't fall into oncoming traffic, thankfully.
And the reign of terror you have wrought against the libraries of your community.
They'll never know what hit them. I'm the nighttime honker. I just spoiled it for everyone in West London. Now I've unveiled myself.
And when they catch you, they're going to throw the book at you. God.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. We have a great film for you this week. I always say that, but it's positivity, baby. And we have a very good guest, actually, which we'll get to, and we'll introduce them in a minute. But it's been a beat since we've had a Spyhards diehard introduced to the ranks of the famous Spyhards diehards throughout the years. And if this is your first time hearing the Spyhards diehard before, it could be because you haven't heard us talk about it, or you've forgotten. But Cam, why don't you educate everyone? What is a Spyhards diehard?
Yes, a Spyhards diehard is an individual who leaves a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts telling the world what they appreciate about the Spyhards podcast. We then read that review on the air and give that individual a very unique and cool Spyhards diehards code name.
I mean, we say it's cool, and frankly, we're the benchmark for cool, so I guess it is.
Right?
Yeah.
If we can't decide, who can?
I mean, we're two guys that have spent over an hour talking to Jacqueline Bisset. It can't get much cooler.
Right?
And we've had some great entries over the years, including a very infamous one where Cam had to do it entirely in a Scottish accent. Yes, we will read anything you write as long as it's 5 stars and on Apple Podcasts. And speaking of reading one out, we have had quite a few. It's been a while since we've actually done this, so we've been saving some up. So over the next few months, we'll be reading out some new ones and try and get some more in, folks. You know, if you're hearing this for the first time, you haven't left us a 5-star review, make sure it's written as well. You know, 5 stars is great, but if you actually type out a review, this is how we see it, and it pops up, and we can actually read it out to you all. So here's the next one we're going to bring up, and it comes all the way from the land down under, from a person named Alasterio. Alasterio? Alasterio? Thanks for leaving me high and dry there, Cam. And they say, love the interviews. When listening to the podcast on a bike ride, I begin hearing interviews with writers and stars of long ago films, which in turn reignites my interest in them and gives them a fresh life for me to watch the films again. The bike rides of late have begun piquing my interest in unknown spy movies, unknown to me. This leap into Cold War espionage and 1940s spy jinx, this connects me with a world of a time previously unknown, or at least uncommon to me. 5 stars. I think we couldn't have picked a better film to connect this review to.
Right, exactly. It's tied to the Cold War. Although I love that this individual says they love the interview episodes, and then we have their review read on a normal review episode. But yes, this is still nonetheless an appropriate matching of review and film.
Hopefully this will entice them to come on over to the review section. I mean, to be fair, we've got almost 100 interviews, so I can understand why a lot of people just listen to those 100 on repeat and keep spinning it. You know, I get it. But there are, 200 plus in reviews at this point as well. So plenty more spy jinx, where that came from. And Alasterio, thank you for the review. Always great to hear from our fans in Australia, a wonderful country and a wonderful part of the world. And it's nice to know that you're sort of learning about these other films you didn't know about, the 1940s Spyhards special spy jinx and some Cold War films you haven't seen before. I'm glad Spyhards and we are introducing you to some new films, which is definitely something that we'll be talking about in about 5 minutes' time.
Yes, indeed, for sure. And now I guess it's time to get to the top secret code name.
It is.
Alasterio has like a real nice ring to it. But I've decided for the code name, we're going to go simple.
Like us.
1 syllable. And I am going to use the code name for Gene Hackman's character in the movie we're about to review, and that is very simply Duke.
It doesn't get much better than Duke.
It really doesn't.
Oh, the Duke's here.
Well, it's not the Duke, because I feel like the Duke is referred to, like, that's John Wayne.
Oh, I suppose. So it's Duke's here.
Just Duke. Not to be confused with G.I. Joe's Duke.
Yeah, of course. So you just say, like, it's just Duke.
That's right. Duke from Australia.
Oh. I bet they carry a knife.
And what a knife.
What a knife. Yeah. They'll know that that's a knife.
They will, and they'll never forget.
They'll never forget. Well, Alasterio, Duke, enjoy your secret code name. It can be used among all spy circles around the world. Now, you will be revered by the name Duke, and if you mutter it near us, we might just know who we're talking to. It's sort of secret spy parlance. We hope you've enjoyed the nickname. Thank you for the review. Become a Spyhards diehards, folk. Leave us a 5-star review. But without further ado, let's get to the review.
Hong Kong.
Cam, the film we have to deal with this week is quite a sort of circle. And in that middle of the circle is what some people would maybe call it a target.
I suppose.
Target, I guess, like you don't want to miss the mark, right?
The bullseye?
It's in the crosshairs.
The dot in the circles?
Great military parlance there, Cam. I love the insight.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to clearly get us on track here, we need to bring in an expert because we're fumbling for words at the beginning of the show. Imagine what it's like at the end. So we sought out an expert to help us talk about this week's film. He is an author, he's a man about town, and most importantly, he's a spy film lover. Joining us on the show, it's Mr. Scott McCrea. Sir, how are you?
I think the Fradistan is in the Mactus practice, and the Mactus practice is 3 feet deep.
Well, on that note,
thanks for
I'm
coming
happy
by.
to.
Yeah. That was the show, folks. We'll see you next week.
No, that was you were doing all through the night. That's double talk from all through the night.
Oh my God, yeah.
The Mactus practice is 3 feet deep.
You are pulling one out of like the Spyhards vault there. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, well, All Through the Night's a great movie.
it is, yeah. But I feel like I had a moment where I hear the Simpsons writers talk about when people come up and acknowledge lines they wrote like 15 years ago, and they're just like, I don't know. And All Through the Night, I mean, we did that episode a long time ago. It's
like a year and a half ago, yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember Peter Lorre burying someone in like a grain of a silo of grain or something in the bottom of a bakery somewhere.
There was a bakery.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one where Bogart gets lost in the woods in the middle of New York because he's in Central Park.
Yes.
And the Nazis are telling. That's a great picture.
Having been to Central Park, I don't know how you'd get lost.
It might have been easier in the 40s. I don't know.
That's true. Maybe there was more Central Park to be had.
More park, less city.
Yeah, it was still central, though.
It was very central, yes.
Now, we'll get to the film. That's coming up in a minute. But let's get to know you, Scott. This is your first time on Spyhards. I mean, I already like you because you've got a good name. I mean,
thank you so much.
It's the best. I mean, no one wants to be called Cam.
Well, clearly, when you look at the list of guests we've had named Scott versus the list of guests named Cam, well...
Have we had a Cam before?
No, not even close.
Well, that means that my sign saying no Cams allowed is working.
Clearly.
I don't think I've met a Cam before.
It's for the best. You don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take him. No, please. Take him. I mean.
So I'm Scott McCrea, and I'm a writer, and I'm here not only just to say hello to you two guys, but more importantly, to plug my new book, a spy novel called Target's Rest.
Yes.
Well, do it. You've set it up.
I'm plugging.
Talk about it.
It is a terrific book. It's a terrific book, if I do say so myself. I've written a lot of Westerns in the past, and I was wondering what would I do if I wanted to somehow mash up the Western and the spy novel. So this is a contemporary novel about a cattleman named Lucas Wheeler, who's just trying to sell some Arabian horses to an Arabian sheik. When the State Department says, there's something funny going on there, would you just keep your eyes and ears open for us. And the next thing you know, poor Lucas is involved in an international plot, which takes him from New York to London to Saudi Arabia, and then back to London for a thrilling climax in the O2 auditorium. So, and it's.
I appreciate you called it the O2 and not the Millennium Dome. Well done for being current.
Thank you, sir. And it's gotten a lot of really great advance notices, and I'm really happy with it. Buy this book.
Buy it. Do it.
I have a question, because you clearly love spy films. If you're referencing All Through the Night, I mean, it's hard to go much better than that. But why did it take you so long to write a spy novel, when you've written so many other books?
That's a good question. So thrillers were always my sweet spot, and I just and I love westerns also. And I had written a book about Buffalo Bill Cody.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of my first novels, and I was shopping that around, and a publisher said, "I'm passing on the Buffalo Bill book, but do you have anything else?" And I said, "Well, no, but I could come up with something else." And the next thing I knew, I'd written 25 westerns,
Mm-hmm.
and I took a breath and I said, "Well, now it's time to get back to thrillers." So I'm happy to say Target's West is doing so well that they've already contracted me for a sequel, which is going to be called Prosecution League.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you see, if it was someone unimaginative like me, it would be called Targets East.
Target's East, yes.
And that's why we don't invite cans.
That's right. And then you do Targets North, Targets South, and then that's it.
At least there's a synergy between the book title and this week's film too. I like that.
That's the first thing I thought when you said you want to do Target. I said, "Well, I'm writing Target's West. This is perfect."
Yeah, I'd like to think that the book is a sequel to the film.
Well, actually, so the great thing about the movie is that you have no idea that Gene Hackman is this accomplished and smart, and poor Lucas Wheeler is just your average American cattleman who rises to the occasion. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah. I'm also now curious to see what other London landmarks you can get into the next book, because you've had the O2. That's a pretty big place to go. Like what's the next landmark you're looking to work in?
Well, Trafalgar Square actually plays
Great
a big
place.
part in the book too. But the next book actually takes place just in the U.S. I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. It's okay.
But the conceit of the book is that the three major action sequences of this book take place in Bunker Hill, then Fort Sumter, and then the Alamo. So it's three famous battle scenes of the United States.
Okay. Well, we've talked about the book, and there will be a link in the show notes below, so you can go and buy a copy right now, folks. And we'll talk about it a little bit at the end. But I also kind of want to get a sense on your spy movie pedigree, Scott. You've mentioned All Through the Night. Sure, but what do you tend to go for when you reach for a spy movie? Because it's such a broad sort of genre and different subtypes in that genre. What's your go-to? Is it an action film? Is it like a Jean le Carré adaptation? What are you reaching for?
So I think the best spy movie ever made is, probably the best spy movie released to theaters would be The Third Man,
Right.
which I think is a great movie. And you could carp as to whether or not that's a spy movie or not, but I think it's a spy movie. And then there's another great movie called Pack of Lies, which was a made-for-TV movie in the 80s, oddly enough.
Oh.
So, which is brilliant. I saw it on Broadway with Patrick McGoohan.
Pack of Lies, you say? I guess we should add that to the
Yeah.
Patreon list.
I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was an American TV movie with Terry Garr and Alan Bates, and Ellen Bernstein. And on Broadway, the Alan Bates part was Patrick McGoohan. I was lucky enough to see it because I was a kid and I was obsessed with spy movies, and I wanted to see Patrick McGoohan on Broadway. I had no idea I was going to see a play that was that good. So my taste is all over the place. Like, I think one of the great spy movies is Octopussy.
Oh.
Mainly just so I can hear Louis Jourdan say Octopussy. So yeah, I'm a big Bond fan. I'm enormous. In fact, I was telling someone else just recently that the whole genesis of Target's West is I was so obsessed with Ian Fleming when I was growing up that I wondered what kind of book would Ian Fleming write if he was an American. So the whole conceit behind Target's West is that it sounds kind of like Fleming, but through an American idiom. So it's a very Fleming-esque book. So yeah, my taste is all. I do like. I think spy movies kind of lost the plot after the '80s, but I'm open to be told that I'm wrong on that.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit. Let's pick that apart. That's an interesting sort of jumping off point.
Yeah.
What? Why do you feel that way? I suppose is the first question. What's turned you off post 1980s?
So not turned me off. The villain changed. So I mean, the wall went down with the end of the Cold War. So then what is the connection between spying and, say, terrorism? And that's a much more nebulous, difficult thing to get your hands around. And then also, the identifiable villain is hard because, our takes on who is and is not the bad guy seems to change regularly now. And from the 40s with the Nazis all the way through 89 with the Cold War, it was very easy to tell, these are the bad guys and we are the good guys. Or even if you wanted to be more complex, like Le Carré, you could say, well, it's more nuanced than that, but we do know who the enemy is. And I think the enemy is kind of harder to nail today. So,
Right. Well, it became more of like the enemy within because you had the Bourne series. You have, with Goldeneye right off the bat,
yeah,
the villain is someone from MI6.
yeah,
Elliot Carver is like a British, broadcaster and journalist. It's
yeah,
people that are very much from the country the spies are coming from too.
yeah, yeah. And the other thing also is I think the advent of the action movie, which is different from an adventure movie. And the only thing that made me think of this is you had just mentioned Bourne, is that the Bourne movies cut so fast. They're cut so fast that it's really I think it's just a question of central overload, as a sensory overload, as opposed to nuance and plot and interest. I mean, so for example, I don't think the Richard Chamberlain, The Bourne Identity, is very good. But I like it more than the Matt Damon, which I think is terrible. Simply because I just think it's all of these, jump cuts and images and punches. And after a while, you've seen a million movies like this. And I'd rather see an interesting bad movie than a good bad movie. I just think the Bourne movies are not particularly, but that's me. So
You're in safe territory here. You can espouse your opinion. Not everyone listening will agree, but that's fine. That's what discourse is for.
Well, I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on the Craig Bond films? Because you mentioned Octopussy and being big into Bond.
So I love Casino Royale.
Mm-hmm.
I love Casino Royale.
Right.
Okay,
gotcha.
So I think, another unpopular opinion, I think he's part of the reason that Bond is dead. Because
I think that's true.
I can't imagine Cubby Broccoli turning to Roger and saying, Roger, what do you think we should do next? I mean,
I love that.
Cubby said, you're doing this, and you're lucky to get it. And I think any actor in the world who gets Bond is blessed because your life is made. And he treated it like a poison chalice, and I'm underwhelmed by Craig, and I'm underwhelmed by his movies. So there, those are fighting words.
Boom.
But I couldn't stand. What was the second one? I can't even remember the name of it.
Quantum of Solace.
First off, that's a perfect example of all of this jump cutting. Like I couldn't even tell what was going on with the car chase in the beginning. Like,
sure.
What the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And then the villain. I mean, it was a movie of the week villain. And then I think Spectre and what was after Spectre?
No Time to Die.
No Time. They're interchangeable movies to me. If Roger Moore died in his tenure of Bond, in the films, it would have meant something because you were invested in him. But I don't think anyone was really invested in Craig.
I think, just to be the contrarian in this conversation,
Please.
I think there is and I know we're not talking about the film, folks, but hey, you're tuning in to hear a discussion about spy movies, and that's what this is.
Yes.
It's a generational thing as well. I think, I'm sure there are people whose first Bond movie was Casino or Quantum or Skyfall. And they saw the end of No Time to Die and had an emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great. I think it caters for so many different generations of people. Me, myself, I wasn't all that moved by it, but I like Daniel Craig. I'm a Daniel Craig supporter if you have to pick a side in some sort of battle. But, I mean, should you have killed Bond? I think that's a bigger question. Well, I think like if you look at Daniel Craig's 5-film run and you take it away from the 22 other films, I think it works. Like in that's fine. But it doesn't connect to Roger. It doesn't connect to Sean. It doesn't connect to Tim or George or hell, even Peter Sellers. It doesn't connect to any of them.
Barry Nelson.
Barry Nelson, yes.
Barry Nelson, no connection. But I think that's also fine. I think it's fine to have its own continuity. And I think now, because I think one of the benefits of blowing Bond up is now they can start again. With none of this like Judi Dench hangover stuff that confuses everyone, the Aston Martin turning up or the Vantage from Living Daylights for some reason is in his garage. I don't really know why. You just go, nope, start again. No connection, just new Bond. And I think that's a really great way of being able to launch this Amazon era is by saying there is nothing to start from. And that's probably why you can't do a Pierce Brosnan callback film.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, so like part of me would love that, but the sane part of me says, yeah, it would never work.
I'm sure people would watch it.
Yeah.
Older people?
Would it be good?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Pierce Brosnan could probably still get some people in. I think the nostalgia, like, you can't discount.
Okay. You think Amazon is looking to pull in the older Bond audience? You think this is going to pull in the 20-year-olds they would want?
Is that what they want?
Yes. I think that they want Bond to be popular.
I think, well, okay, yes, of course. They want a new generation of Bond fans. I think there is something to be said about getting the other generations on board. One thing you'd seem to see on all these online, on the discourse around franchises, Star Wars seems to be going through it, Doctor Who seems to be going through it. There's an alienation of years and years and years of fans, and they're showing that displeasure because they've been left behind for the newer generations. By saying online this is trash or whatever, and so it breeds a hostility within a fandom. Whereas if you try and get the older fans on board, I think you might have a more harmonious way of launching a new Bond. I don't know.
What did you guys think of Dial of Destiny?
Didn't like it.
I think it was a bad film. I think that's the problem, really.
Yeah.
I don't mind there being a 5th Indiana Jones film. I just think it wasn't a very good film.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I was delighted to see him again.
Sure.
I love the idea that it was set in 1969 and that he was a man out of time. I don't think they really did enough with that, and I would have given him a different sidekick. So
right.
I think ultimately it's a failure, but it's an interesting failure.
I have of the opinion you can't make an Indiana Jones film that doesn't have a single good action sequence.
Yeah,
it's like that's just. I'm sorry, you can't. Like that's when you do, you failed.
Yeah, I can't think of a single good action sequence in a film unless you go to the opening, and most of that's CGI, so I'm not even sure that counts.
It's pretty CG and a lot of CG artifacts in front of the blocking you between the actors. A lot of mist, dust, water droplets, anything to disguise the CG throughout that entire movie.
Yeah. So yeah, it's ultimately a disappointment. Glad to see him, but the disappointment.
So what you're saying is, it missed the target.
It missed the target.
Bringing it around.
We're back on track.
Cam, what are we talking about this week?
We're talking about 1985's Target, starring Gene Hackman.
And that's why the joke worked, everyone.
Yes. And Matt Dillon.
And Matt Dillon as well, yeah, and directed by Arthur Penn.
If you haven't been on this adventure with Gene Hackman and co., here is your synopsis, and it might actually win the award for the shortest synopsis I've ever read.
Really? Okay.
Target. The threat. The search. The truth.
Oh, get out of here. That's so generic.
I know. A Texan with a secret past searches Europe with his son after the KGB kidnap his wife.
I mean,
End.
Yeah, that ain't bad.
That is it. Yeah.
Works
That's
for me.
the plot.
Sounds like a blurb.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, the one on IMDb is even shorter. When American Donna Lloyd is kidnapped during a trip to Europe, her son Chris and her husband Walter start searching for her.
kind of everything you need to know, right?
It's kind of the first 10 minutes done.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's go back a little bit. Now, this is a first watch for me, as they often are on the show. Cam, first watch for you?
First watch, and we should note this is recorded, not too long after the passing of Gene Hackman in fairly tragic circumstances. And, this wasn't initially planned for that reason. It is interesting that now we're looking at it more from the point of view of looking back at Gene Hackman's work. But this was one, I was going through the list of, Gene Hackman's filmography before we started watching this, because I was thinking, like, why had I not really heard of Target? And you see that, like, post-70s, Gene Hackman was doing a lot of these thrillers, a lot of action films, and a lot of them are forgotten. There's the ones that are remembered. Narrow Margin will pop out to people, Uncommon Valor. There's a few of them that I think still have name value, but a lot of them I feel like have kind of evaporated, this being one of them. So, yeah, I just never come across it.
It's an interesting decade for Gene Hackman, and something I was trying to chart just how many spy films the guy did, because I've watched this week alone, recording the two episodes I'm about to talk about. They'll be released very different times, but I've watched two different Gene Hackman spy films, one in the middle of the decade and one at the end, and they are very different performances.
Yeah, and I remember when we covered The Package. I, in that one, was talking about an interview Gene Hackman gave on the press tour for The Package, and another film, I can't remember which one it was, but he was basically just like burnt out and was just like, I'm fed up with directors. I just don't really enjoy this at this point. So it does seem like Gene Hackman, going through the 70s, huge megastar that was beloved, he'd won an Oscar for The French Connection. In the 80s, he goes really prolific. He's just cranking out these movies like crazy, but I think it kind of burnt him out. And then the 90s, you see kind of the rebirth with like Unforgiven, he wins an Oscar for, and he becomes like the prestige go-to, A grade actor you want in these types of movies. Even if you're doing something like Crimson Tide, it's like Gene Hackman is above the line in a big, exciting way.
Unforgiven's one of his best performances.
Yeah.
He's magnificent in that. It's incredible when you think back, because I'm older than you guys by a lot, that when you think of Hackman in the 70s, he was like just incredible box office, and The Poseidon Adventure is one of the biggest movies of the 70s. And he almost carries that thing on his back all by himself. And when the Salkins were trying to get financing for Superman, he did that on the back of Brando and Hackman. When he signed them, he knew he'd be able to get the money for it. So, I mean, his name carried a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, less so. I mean, I go back to Target for a minute. I think a lot of people forget what a huge star Matt Dillon was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just an enormous star. And I would say probably in 1985, he was probably as famous as Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
That's actually something I wanted to get into, because I'm not all that familiar with Matt Dillon's work. I've seen a few of his films. And I was looking at his IMDb, and he's done a few films before this, but not many.
Yeah.
Like this is, I think it's like 6th or 7th feature film.
Yeah, it was the fact it was like this run where he'd done Tex, The Outsiders,
Rumblefish,
and Flamingo Kid. This was basically an ascent of like the next, like kind of Tom Cruise level superstar, but also someone who's a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
And so it really was this sense of like, this guy is going to be enormous. And then he does Target, which, we'll talk about kind of the, the response to the movie later, but like it was not a box office hit. And it seems like it kind of was a little bit of a bump for him on kind of a path towards what seemed at the time like, here's the next movie star and the biggest movie star in the world kind of thing.
Yeah. I think the last time I saw him was Something About Mary, and that's the early 90s.
Yeah, that actually might be it for me too, funnily enough.
I saw him in he was in the movie Armored, the action film, from a few years ago. He also popped up in a smaller role relatively recently in Asteroid City, but he's not. The Matt Dillon promise, I think, was always bumpy. Like, it's like up front, it was like, this guy's going to be one of the best. And
he's going to be James Dean.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like he kind of ebbs and flows. He'll pop back up, do Something About Mary and a couple other things where he gets a lot of acclaim. He got a lot of acclaim for Crash, back in the 2000s. And then it's kind of like he goes, kind of away for a bit and then comes back and people are reminded. He's kind of one of those great talents that people have to be reminded that he's gone for a while.
Well, he did like Crash, and then the next film is Herbie Fully Loaded.
Which was also a crash.
I think the problem with him actually is that, he started out, he was on the cover of Tiger Beat and things like that. So he was, a teeny bopper idol. And it's hard to get past that. I mean, no matter how terrific you are, you're sort of, he was sort of like, oh, help me, the guy from the Blue Lagoon. Christopher, he's like the brunette Christopher Atkins, and so nobody expects anything from him. So they're always shocked when he delivers, and then they forget about him again. So it's rough business. What can I say?
There's a question left hanging in the air, and I asked Cam about his connection to the film. A little bit of behind the scenes of how Spyhards is made. When we talking to people coming on the show, we'll often pitch a couple of films we've got coming up, and see if there's like someone who knows the film and there's an interest, and we go from there. When I pitched Target to you, along with a different film, but Target, I wasn't expecting for you to actually know what the film was. So when you were like, "Oh, Target, sure," I was like, "Oh, cool!" Like someone who knows this film. This is wonderful, because we have a lot of these films where we talk about them, and it feels like it falls on deaf ears sometimes. So it's great to have that. So what's your connection, Scott, to Target? Did you see it, around release or home video or anything like that?
So when I was a kid, I was in my, good God, it's 1985. So I'm like 19, 20, something like that when this came out. And I was one of the youngest members of the Mystery Writers of America at the time. And a good friend of mine lived nearby me. His name was Chris Steinbrenner, and he was the vice president of the Mystery Writers of America. And he had a press pass to this. And he said, "You want to go see this movie? I have a press pass." And all you have to do is dangle a movie in front of me. It's like I'm a donkey with a carrot. I'm like, all right, I'm in. And I actually liked it a great deal, and I hadn't forgotten it. And when I rewatched it for this podcast, I was shocked at how much of it I remembered. So I actually think it's a good movie, and I remember the cultural moment that it happened in. So when you said, "Do you want, what are these movies?" Oh, I'm going to do Target, because I remember, the year that came out very well, and I remember what was going on when it came out. So, and here I am. I like this picture a lot.
Well, I think that can help synthesize with what Cam's about to talk us through, which is the how we got Target, because you can talk about contemporaneously what was going on.
Sure.
But Cam, why don't you sort of lead us off? How did we get Target?
So it may not surprise you at all, but the behind-the-scenes details on this one are rather sparse. There is not a lot written about the production of Target. So
that is odd, considering like the director and stuff. Like there is some pedigree here.
I know. So the story credit for the movie is Leonard Stern, and that's, I'm going to assume, the genesis of this movie. And he was a New York-born screenwriter and producer, and got his start with the uncredited work on 1949's Africa Screams, the Abbott and Costello film that I'm sure has aged very well.
Got Frank Buck.
Yeah. And then in 1950, he had his first real credit on Ma and Pa Kettle Go to Town, which was a spin-off of the Egg and I film. And Ma and Pa Kettle Go to Town was like this ongoing series of movies.
Marjorie Main and Percy Kilbride.
Yes, and they're very good in the Egg and I. So, you know what? It makes sense to launch them in their own series. And at that point, Stern is bouncing between Ma and Pa films, Abbott and Costello, Bowery Boys, a lot of these comedy acts of the time. He does the 1952 Jazz Singer remake with Michael Curtiz directing it that was box office flop, but it was a kind of an effort to take a very, 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 very problematic movie from 1928 and make a Technicolor musical out of it. Did not succeed.
It's Danny Thomas, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yes. And then he basically just goes to TV, and he's doing shows like The Honeymooners, The Jackie Gleason Show. He does a bunch of episodes of Get Smart, Macmillan and Wife. And this movie was actually his film follow-up to The Nude Bomb, the attempt to bring Maxwell Smart to the big screen in 1980. Yeah. And so actually Stern also wrote the Get Smart Again TV movie, which we covered on the Patreon.
I didn't think there'd be a Get Smart connection in this episode, truth be told.
There is a weird amount of TV crossover with this movie.
Okay.
Which I wouldn't have expected with an Arthur Penn film, but it's like all the writers were people who were primarily working in TV. So, yeah. The screenplay, was then handled by Don Peterson, who was an Iowa-born writer, who'd done the 1975 vigilante thriller Deadly Hero, which was about a police officer who did a lot of bad things and became a folk hero. And it was the 70s, folks. And then he did the showbiz romance called An Almost Perfect Affair in 79. And then this, and that's it. That's his entire filmography, was those 3 films. And the other writer was Howard Burke, who was born in Massachusetts and started off in TV in the mid-50s and got his first film credit with the 1970 World War II exploitation thriller, The Last Day of the War. And then he mostly headed into TV. He worked on Mission Impossible. He worked with Leonard Stern, the story credit writer, on Macmillan and Wife. So that's where that relationship starts. And I wonder if that's where the connection for the screenplay actually happens, is these two knowing each other. And then did shows like Columbo, Mrs. Columbo, a bunch of other random TV shows, and then did Target. So it was interesting to me how all of the people that worked on this movie are, the 2 primary big writers who had big careers were all from TV at that point, moving into this movie.
I think the only thing I can sort of say to synthesize that is one of my notes on this film, which I'll expand on later, is there is a certain sense that it feels like a TV movie.
It looks like one.
It does look like one, yeah.
It has that flat photography that you would connote with television rather than sort of the deep focus of a movie.
Almost like a lack of scope.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and the Hollywood Reporter posted a notice about this movie and its production at a certain point, and they mentioned there was another writer named Ron Bass attached, who may have done some work and departed and wasn't credited. I'm not sure, but he got his start the same year, actually in '85. He was probably working on a couple things, but in 1985, he did a movie called Codename Emerald, which is a spy film with Ed Harris, which I've added to our list, and did a lot of movies in the future, like Rain Man, Joy Luck Club, Dangerous Minds, Entrapment. He was like a go-to Hollywood screenwriter for a long time. So it wouldn't surprise me if he would have been involved at some point. But, yeah.
Maybe it's just like punching up words or something, like dialogue pass or something.
He was mentioned early.
Oh.
So he may have been attached to work on the screenplay and departed. I'm not sure.
Didn't hit the mark.
Boom.
Yeah.
That was a weak one. That was mid. That was a mid 5 out of 10. I wasn't too happy with that.
Yeah. And at the time of Hollywood Reporter and Variety reporting on this movie, it was being referred to as On Target.
On Target.
Huh. I mean, I'm not quite sure how Target ties into the film.
Well, Hackman is the target, but they're getting everybody else. I
guess. It feels like generic spy movie title here.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little generic. There's a pretty good hook to the movie of your father being a spy. Like, that's something. Why not call it Papa Spy?
Papa Spy.
I mean, there is a world where it's a comedy, and it's like, wait, my parents are spies, or like, oh, my dad's a spy, or oops, my dad's a spy, or something like that, like a real teen comedy.
Sure.
Well, so if I could just interject a tiny bit of
no.
All right, well,
please.
Easy come, easy go. So, 1985. When was it shot, Ken?
Probably 84.
Okay,
84.
So it's not that long after the 70s and of course the early 80s. You have to remember in the late 70s there was this huge sort of populist revival in like interest in the everyman. So you had truckers were heroes and farmers were heroes, and I think the fact that he's this guy who is in the American Midwest and he has a factory calls back to that. It's like, it was right after the era of, ordinary heroes that we saw in the 70s. And I think that's what, where they were trying to go with that. It's like, oh, well, you don't know the untapped potential of the average American. For all you know, they're probably ex-secret agents or hired assassins, or at least, inherently or wonderfully capable. And I'm sure that that's what they were going for, even with sort of the way it was so flatly recorded and shot in the opening sequences where he's in his home. I mean, it's it's the quintessential bland American home with the bland American bedroom. The factory is not particularly interesting looking, but the focal point is that the guy is interesting because he is not only sort of this American archetype, but he's an American hero the way Americans are in general. And I think that's part of its historical moment. It probably just missed it. I think if this movie had opened in like 1981 or 1979, it would have been bigger because I think it would have hit that note at the right moment. I think it's missing it by just a couple of years.
Yeah, it's like, you think of of that kind of time period. There's so many movies where they are showing kind of the seedy side of corporate life or the business world or financial world. 2 years later, you're going to get Wall Street with Gordon
Right.
Gekko, and having Gene Hackman play, the guy who works in like the lumber yard. That just like
Yeah.
screams trustworthy, which is a good
Mm.
setup for someone who comes from a world of double crosses and espionage.
Yeah. And I think the way they set up his son, so Matt Dillon is, the loser kid. He's a great disappointment to his dad. He's playing with cars. And he doesn't realize that, dad has it all over him in every way you could possibly imagine. And he's actually something of a doofus, no matter how slick Matt thinks he is. He's actually not all that capable. He does shine at the end, but so I think the setup is really good, and I think it works well in its historical context.
And also, 1985 was quite a year for generational clashes because you've got Back to the Future the same year. And I
Yeah,
kept thinking about that movie when I was watching this, the idea of like, you can't understand your parents until you can kind of walk in their shoes a little bit.
yeah. I didn't make that connection myself. Yeah, Back to the Future.
Yeah. So, overseeing this movie, Arthur Penn, we referenced him, born in Pennsylvania, and one of the big directors of the late 60s and 70s, and started off in TV in the 50s. His first major movie was the Paul Newman Western, The Left-Handed Gun, in 1958. Have you seen that movie, Scott?
Of course, it's a western.
Okay. How is it?
It's surprisingly good. I think he's actually a somewhat underrated director. Left-Handed Gun is another one of those Billy the Kid movies,
Mm-hmm.
and it's surprisingly deft. I don't think it's his best movie, but it's really good.
I'm going to check that one out because I hadn't really heard of it. And it intrigues me because Paul Newman, of course, that's a draw right there. But the movie that puts Arthur Penn on the map is 1962's The Miracle Worker, which is the story of Helen Keller and Anne Sullivan. And it was a big Oscar movie. It won Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress for Anne Bancroft and Patty Duke for that movie. He was nominated for Best Director. And that sort of sets him up. And, a few years later, he's going to do Bonnie and Clyde and completely revolutionize the film industry with its depictions of violence. Gene Hackman is a supporting character in that movie, gets an Oscar nomination. So Arthur Penn also kind of launches Gene Hackman from the world of theater and, TV in smaller parts into a movie star status. And Arthur Penn goes on and does movies like Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman in 1970.
Hate that movie. Hate that movie. God, I hate that movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on a western. I'll say that.
If I could grab every existing print of Little Big Man and throw it into a fiery pit and erase everybody's memory of it, the world would be a better place. So I don't know if you could tell. I don't like that movie.
Think that comes across. Yeah.
Yeah.
Arthur Penn also reteamed with Gene Hackman for 1975's Night Moves, which is a really fantastic neo-noir. Very gritty stuff, and I recommend people check that one out if they're looking for Gene Hackman movies they haven't seen in the wake of his passing. It's worth visiting or revisiting. And then in 1981, Arthur Penn did a movie called Four Friends, which was basically an examination of the 60s and sort of a character piece of a group of friends going through school and then the periods of the 60s of, kind of tumultuous change. And it was a real flop, like a big flop. And that movie sort of led to him doing Target a couple years later. That was what the previous film was.
Okay.
Like safer ground, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we underestimate how important Bonnie and Clyde was.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think that violence in movies really started with Psycho, but almost everything in Psycho, even though you see her murdered in the shower, is more suggestive than actually seen.
Mm-hmm.
But The Wild Bunch, which is a Western, and Bonnie and Clyde, which if you wanted to make the argument was also a Western, really pushed the envelope for violence, and I think changed movies forever, for good or bad, depending on how you see it. Bonnie and Clyde also has Gene Wilder. It's such a remarkable picture. It's probably Warren Beatty's best movie.
Yeah, and I actually got to see it on the big screen a few years ago. I'd seen it.
How did it hit you?
Well, I'd seen it on VHS when I was probably a teenager, and when I was 18, the idea of like Bonnie and Clyde, this is gonna be exciting, and then seeing the movie and being like, oh, this is like a meditative character piece. I didn't really expect that, so I enjoyed it, but it kind of caught me off guard, and so revisiting it many years later, it was kind of like this is a incredible movie, and I wasn't quite ready for it at 18.
Did you see it?
I'm still not ready for it at 37.
But we can do that one on the Patreon because it's Gene Hackman film. So
fine,
one day
there you go.
Yeah.
Cam will get us ready for it, and when it happens, folks, you'll know I'm ready.
Yeah, that's right. So when it comes to the two actors, Matt Dillon was drawn to this movie by the father-son stuff and just the chance to work with Gene Hackman. That was the draw for him. And I saw an interview with him. It's amazing. There's actually online, if you look on YouTube, there are interviews with both of them from the Target press tour.
I think is it the 5-minute one with Dillon?
Yes, isn't it incredible?
It's awkward as hell.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, I thought we were bad. Like, no, this guy's terrible.
It's like monosyllabic. All of his answers, he's like...
the guy asking questions was terrible, but also, Dillon did not have any idea how to do like a media interview.
No, which is fascinating because he had done multiple movies.
He looked pretty sleepy, didn't he?
Yeah, or something.
Or something.
Well, no comment on that.
Being polite. He looked pretty sleepy.
Well, he had a rough night. Yeah,
a rough night, yes.
Yeah.
My favorite part is at the end when the interviewer turns to the camera to basically sign out, and Dillon just stares blankly at the camera with the most dead eyes.
Well, it's the first question where he's like, he wants to go back into Dillon's career about a film he did before that I don't recognize, and he asks the question, and Dillon says like, "So, what do you want from me?"
Yeah. And then I also watched a Gene Hackman one from the time. So jovial. He was so happy to be there, and he was just fawning over the experience of doing Uncommon Valor, and it was actually really interesting because I'd done, obviously, that research for the package where Gene Hackman seemed burnt out on any sort of press stuff.
Yeah.
And then watching that interview, he was just like...
And Company Business as well the other day.
Yeah, and Company Business. And watching him talk about this movie, he was like Santa Claus. He was all a twinkle.
It's like, target.
Yeah.
Not just burnt out, but kind of embittered in some way.
Yeah.
I always found that interesting. He seemed to have these mood swings that lasted quite a long time. And I often wondered why. I mean, was he unhappy with what he was doing, or unhappy with the movies, or? I mean, he's never less than wonderful himself, and that's kind of what matters, right?
Well, yeah, and it's in that interview they ask him about doing all these action films. Do you enjoy them? And he said, "Yeah, I do, because it doesn't depend entirely on dramatic acting to carry the movie. So it's almost like he's able to relax a little." After probably being, feeling very much like he has to deliver 1,000% in all of these, character pieces in the 70s, he can bring the character work, but also have support from the technical side. He seemed to enjoy that in 1985 press tour terms.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, think about it. He's kind of like the Liam Neeson of the 80s.
Yeah.
He was this established leading man / character actor, and the next thing you know, he's making action pictures. He's not working that hard.
No.
It's interesting you mentioned Liam Neeson.
Okay.
I won't say any more for now.
Okay. Is he going to be on the show?
Yes. Surprise guest. Joining us now.
Sorry, Scott. We only have room for one. Bye.
Hi.
Liam.
Yes.
He has a special set of skills, and he's about to deliver them on the podcast.
Yes.
So
Go on, Cam.
The budget for this movie was $12.9 million. Domestically, it did $9 million. Did not seem to have a worldwide release, like an international release.
It would have had one, I'm sure.
I don't know. In those days, not necessarily. If it underperforms in America, it's a pretty American film.
I've thrown out there, Brits listening. I know there are dozens of you. Did you see Target in the cinemas? Let us know.
Yeah. So ultimately, it lands at the worldwide box office at number 91 for the year.
Wow.
Yeah. It was actually beaten in its first box office week by Death Wish 3.
Wow.
So that kind of tells
Wow.
you it was not a hit at all
One of the worst movies ever made.
until the Crackdown. Crackdown's pretty
Yeah.
bad too, the fourth
Yeah.
one. But yeah, it was at number 91 between the Patsy Cline biopic Sweet Dreams with Jessica Lange and Ed Harris, which is completely forgotten, and Mischief, the sex comedy with co-starring Kelly Preston. That's a rough duo. And if you look at the two posters for both those movies, they both feature intimate activity in cars.
What was that second film?
Mischief. Yeah, from 1985.
I'm looking it up for research purposes, folks.
Sure you
Chill
are.
out. Let's have a look. Oh, she seems to have fallen and can't get up.
Yeah.
Chris Nash is picking her up from behind somehow. Okay,
Yes,
right.
yes, right.
Let me help you, my fair lady. Mm.
So the top three for the year, number 1 was Out of Africa, number 2 was Back to the Future, and number 3 was Rambo 2. And this was actually the final collaboration for Gene Hackman and Arthur Penn. So that's kind of noteworthy. You've got the trilogy, but I think the first two films are kind of like these landmark films, and then this one's more of a curiosity. And then the final note I had, which maybe explains the box office a little bit, was this was made by CBS Theatrical Films. They collapsed the year this movie was released. This was one of the final films they put out, so I don't know how much marketing muscle they really had at this point in time.
Oh, okay.
Wow. I'm shocked that Out of Africa outperformed Back to the Future, but
Well,
it's mind-boggling to me. But
it's a pretty snoozy Best Picture winner.
most Best Picture winners are pretty snoozy, so
Well,
yeah.
not compared to Out of Africa. I mean, a lot of them seem pretty exciting compared to that one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting the whole CBS thing though, because that would lead into Cam's theory that maybe it didn't get a worldwide release because they weren't willing to pay for it, or didn't want to find someone to do international distribution.
Yeah, it's kind of like, now there's that Shingle Ketchup Studios that's putting movies out, and they've basically taken these movies that are abandoned. Like there was the Ben Affleck one, Hypnotic, and there was the recent, very very recent at the time of recording, a Looney Tunes animated movie. I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I saw that twice. The Day the Earth Blew Up. I actually saw
Yeah.
it twice. I loved it.
Is it good?
Oh, it's wonderful.
They're in talks now to buy the rights to Acme versus whatever it is.
Coyote.
The W. That's it. The WB one that they were going to just throw in the bin.
Yeah, so Ketchup Entertainment is basically putting movies out, but with no muscle whatsoever. So the movies they're putting out are making no money.
Oh.
And so it's kind of like a curious situation. I wonder if that's...
Do they have like a streaming service, or it's all about just getting it on there, or?
I mean, at a certain point, these movies will go to streaming.
Well, the Day the Earth Blew Up was supposed to actually be pulled from theaters today, this Wednesday.
Right.
But it has been performing so well that they're keeping it for at least another week.
Yeah.
So it's doing something.
All right, folks, let's talk about it. Target time. Did it hit the mark? Scott, you're our guest. Guests always go first. You visited the film when it came out. You're revisiting it now. What do you think of Target in 2025?
I'll give you a short answer and a long-winded answer. My short answer is I like it a lot.
Sure.
My long-winded answer is G.K. Chesterton wrote a book about Dickens, and he said, Dickens wrote a lot of great books. He wrote a lot of turkeys, but if you want to read the book where you get an idea of who he is the most, like the most Dickensian book of all of Dickens's work, there's a book called Master Humphrey's Clock, which I like a lot. And I kind of think Target is like, it's certainly not Pack of Lies or The Whistleblower or The Fourth Protocol or any of the great thrillers of the 80s, but it's probably the most typical. I mean, if you want to say, well, this is a typical 80s spy thriller, sort of like the model for that. So I think if you're, depending on what you're looking for, it's certainly a good and viable spy movie. It's a good thriller. It's not great, but it's probably the most typical of its genre for that decade. And if you want to know, what's a spy movie from the 80s like, I'd say see Target.
Yeah. Yeah. Not Remo Williams? From the same year?
No, it's fine. So I used to be really good friends with Warren Murphy, who wrote the books that's based on, and he loved Joel Grey. It's the only thing he liked about the movie. Otherwise, he thought it was a turkey. So.
We've had it from several reliable sources that most people thought it was a turkey, as you put it. So I think they're in good company there. And much as I would love to see a Remo come back, I'm not too sure that we're ever going to see the Destroyer again, unfortunately. But going back to Target, I think that's a very succinct and way of putting it. And also quite an interesting way of looking at it as sort of a atypical thriller of the 80s. Mm-hmm. This is the benchmark,
like the blueprint.
I mean, I'm not saying this is Goldfinger, but it is kind of like they say Goldfinger
is Scott's hot take.
Yeah, hot take. Target is the blueprnt of
not Goldfinger.
It's the Goldfinger of thrillers. Please don't print that anywhere, folks. I didn't say it. No, but I like that because it, I don't think this ever raises above the mark of 3 out of 5. But it's a solid 3 out of 5.
It's a solid 3. It's really deftly played. Everybody in it is terrific. I forget who plays the man who's responsible for the abduction.
It's okay. Everyone does because he's barely in it.
Okay. I mean, that should have been Herbert Loam, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because he was everywhere in the 80s. And Gayle Hunnicutt's in it, and she's tied up to a chair at the end, which is a total waste.
I'll get back to the wife.
Yeah.
That's
yeah, and then you have the the coquette that seduces Matt Dillon, who he smacks in the face, and then you never see her again. So you're never quite sure. So that's a completely underdone piece of.
It was a hell of a punch. She was dead. She died. That was it. That's why you didn't see her again. He killed her.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think she was there just so they could justify a scene with him with no shirt on.
Oh, for sure.
Her as well.
And her. Oh yeah, you see a bit of that.
Her as well. Yeah. But it's so so much of it is underdone, but so much of it is well done that it's just sort of the perfect typical movie.
I think I like that. I like that outlook. I think bouncing to my side of it, it's an interesting one because I don't think there's any highs. But I don't think there's much in terms of lows. It is really like a bold it straight down the middle thriller. There's some good bits and bad bits that we'll talk about. But what I couldn't shake the entire time is this just felt like a proto version of Taken.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Like it's not like Taken. I think Taken is a step above this film. It's probably a 4 or 3.5 out of 5. But you've got the dad trying to get someone's been taken, trying to get them back, going to Europe to find them. The dad that can do no wrong. Everyone thinks he's lame, and turns out he's really cool. Gene Hackman, and that was the Liam Neeson connection you sort of mentioned earlier. That's why it popped into my head. It's all over my notes, and I don't think that's a bad comparison to draw, because I think a stripped down 80s version of Taken sounds quite interesting.
Yeah,
and Taken never really strives to be one of the all-time greats. It has a couple of moments you'll remember and you move on. And I think there's a couple of moments here that maybe will stick in my head, but I don't think this will ever change my life. But again, I was mostly pulled in. There's a couple of bits where it drags. It is really, really just a 3 out of 5. And I just think it's both good that happened and a shame because, Gene Hackman's here, and Gene Hackman's done some wonderful work, and he's doing okay in this. And Dillon has done some good stuff, and he's doing okay in this. And there's a good chemistry between them.
Yeah.
But I suppose I just sort of sat there going okay, yep, and we're done. Right, cool.
So, I would think Target's better.
Okay.
Because the way the Neeson character is written, he's so predicated on being a badass after all of it happens. It's like, I will hunt you down and I will kill you. And Gene Hackman really just cares about getting his wife back. I mean, this is never, I'm here proving my chops the way Neeson is. And I just think it's more human and better realized in Target.
I think I do get your point there. And I think what Taken maybe gets a couple of bonus points for me in the fact that the action's better in Taken. than it is here. Like
Yeah.
there are some pretty pedestrian scenes in this film. There's a car chase that I think might actually be going less than the speed limit.
I think like you also have Arthur Penn here, and that's a crucial factor in why there's a little more given to like Gene Hackman's performance and Matt Dillon's performance than say Liam Neeson's performance. I just don't know that Pierre Morel is known to be one of the great actor directors
or directors,
but better at shooting action. So
Sure.
Better at shooting.
yeah,
Better at
I think
shooting.
we can all agree there. So that's my take. So we're kind of the Scots are somewhat in agreement, but Cam, what are you saying?
So I guess I'm somewhat in the same boat as you, Scott.
Wait, which
host
one?
Scott, yeah,
Which
host
one?
Scott. Host Scott.
Scott.
Scott 1 and Scott 2. I could be Scott 2.
No, I can be Scott too.
I felt like this movie was trying to do a few things and not really like hitting any of them out of the park. So it wants to be this kind of father-son bonding drama, which is actually, I think, set up really well. I liked the way it felt very naturalistic, the way the two of them were kind of awkward with each other. It wasn't like pumped up soap opera dynamics. It wasn't the, you'll never understand me, you don't know what love is, things like that. You know what I mean? It was just like two guys who kind of couldn't connect. So that felt like very much like an Arthur Penn massaging that kind of material to make it feel real. And I was like pulled in. I'm like, oh, this is actually cool. I've never seen a spy movie like this, where it's the father is a spy and you have kind of a relationship that needs to be mended in that kind of way. You can look at something like True Lies, but that's like a comic book, you know, where Arnie's a kind of family man who has to bring his family back together, but he does it in ways that are really over the top and ridiculous, right?
I mean, he flies a fighter jet and like
Yeah.
shoots someone out of a rocket and stuff. Like, yeah, it's a little bit larger than life.
Yeah, you got the daughter hanging from a Harrier,
It doesn't happen every day.
whereas like Matt Dillon is just walking around a warehouse, like just kind of doing nothing. But I felt like they set up this father-son stuff, but the movie kind of loses it because ultimately they just keep sidelining Matt Dillon throughout the film. And so I was like, okay, well, it sets that up, doesn't quite deliver that in a way I found particularly satisfying. The action stuff, Scott, you referenced, it wants to be that kind of spy thriller. Don't know if I found the thriller aspects particularly thrilling. And then also it has...
And I'll just hold your point. I think just to add to your point, some people would jump on us and say like, oh, but yeah, we're comparing it to Taken and stuff like that. That's like 30 years later.
Sure.
Okay. Day of the Jackal came out in 1975.
Yeah.
And that does as lo-fi action as this is trying to do with actual tension.
Yeah.
1973.
I'm sorry.
It's even more old. Yeah. Yeah, and then it was also like it has this kind of undercurrent of the life of a spy. You know, he's reading Len Dayton at one point. That jumped out to me.
Berlin game.
Yeah, it's kind of like how this impacts kind of the life. And you have Gene Hackman with his former love interest, Lise, and she's talking about, her regrets. There's a lot of this idea of just like the lives they've left behind and how they were corrupted by espionage and became lunatics. That's the word that's used at a certain point in the movie, whereas it used to be about just kind of more of a civil trading of information. That stuff's all really interesting, but it also felt kind of surface level. It didn't feel like it was digging into it. It was kind of going in three different directions without kind of picking one thing and being like, let's just do this one to the fullest.
Yeah. Well, like the family dynamic, I think Hackman and Dillon do have good chemistry together. I think in a different film they could have played a really good like fighting father and son unit.
Yeah.
But it never really commits to doing that. Like the whole idea of having this mildly rebellious son who can't quite live up to what his father's done and is like in his shadow a little bit, and that also that whole teenage angst against your parents that also just always exists. That is a thing. That's never really like played with. There is no real point where like Dillon would do something against Hackman and it would like progress the story. There's a couple of times where maybe he didn't stay in the hotel room.
Yeah.
But that's around about it. There's no like using that antagonism between the two of them to help flesh out the story or push the story forward.
Yeah, even in the car chase, Dillon is there, but he doesn't do anything. I mean,
No.
he chases. He ends up against the edge of the escarpment, and then like, well, all right, I'm done. I'm out.
And they also like become best mates, I think, by the end of the first hour. Like there is no real tension between them anymore. Like they're doing bait and switches and stuff together, and all sorts of stuff. I mean, he does miss his connection to Frankfurt and go to Berlin just to have sex with someone, which he's 18.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It's that happens. It's why I'm heading off to Europe now. Bye, Cam. But I'm out.
Well, actually, I have to say that really stretched. I mean, like my willing suspension of disbelief is huge. I will, if you give me even the faintest justification, I will buy it. But his mother is missing, and he decides, well, she's pretty hot. I think I'll just go over here and shack up with her, and then I'll get back on this chase. And I didn't believe that for a nanosecond, and which is surprising because the best character moment in the whole movie is Dillon's, where he's outside and they're going to kill Hackman, and the woman that he shacked up with, meets him in the cafe and presses a gun against his spine. I'm like, oh, well, this is actually, something's really happening here. This is pretty good. But it's unearned because the justification for him having slept with her to begin with doesn't really make any sense given the condition of the story. I mean, you're searching for your mother. He's clearly closer to his mother than he is to his father. So he decides to go to another town because she's cute. Like it just never for a minute does it feel real.
I did wonder though. I couldn't help but notice that Gene Hackman's character had a type.
Yeah.
Like the wife and Lise, there is a similar kind of look to them. And the hitchhiker girl also had that kind of look.
Oh no.
And I was going I couldn't help but also look at the Lise versus the hitchhiker girl comparison, going these two look a lot alike, separated by some years, obviously, but I don't know. I felt like maybe Arthur Penn was trying to say something with casting there.
And what would you say that is, Cam?
There's a reason maybe he was drawn in by this hitchhiker specifically. Like there was something there.
So, like an Oedipus thing, right?
Maybe. Arthur Penn was an interesting director, so it wouldn't shock me if he was trying to not play necessarily by the safe and sanitized studio rules. He's just hey, let's just work in some odd subtext that might be there. Well, Scott, I was gonna say, did you think the relationship between Dillon and the mother in their first scene together was normal? I thought it was pretty strange.
I mean, he put her underwear on his head, which I don't think I've ever done with my mother before. That she knows about. What?
Yeah, and he's talking about his mom hooking up on vacation.
I was really confused about the dynamic in the family when he first turned up at the house. I got the impression that they'd divorced the parents, and he was going to see his mum, and she was off to shag herself around Europe. That obviously wasn't the case, but yeah, I don't think. I mean, I'm quite close to my parents, but I don't think I've ever done anything quite like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also wouldn't want to be in the room where the director's walking into Matt Dillon and saying, "So, you're gonna have a sex scene now, and I want you to think about passion, intensity, that she's your mom, and really go in and kiss her." What? Sorry? What? Where's my agent? Somebody get my agent. Yeah. That's probably why he was so pissed off in that interview. He just shot that scene.
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
No, but that's a really good point. The relationship there is questionable at best. It's very bizarre. So I was very close to both of my parents, and I don't think I would ever have a conversation like that.
Yeah.
So, Mom, you're going to hook up in Europe? Especially when she was married to my dad.
Hey, Mom, wear protection.
Wear protection, yeah.
Huh? Mom, no.
Yeah. My mother actually had 4 children, and I'm sure she was convinced that I didn't know she ever had sex.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's a very parental thing, isn't it? They just. Although I to be fair, I'm quite happy pretending that never happened.
Right. We're miraculous births, both of us.
We're all immaculate births.
That's what host Scott and I bonded over.
Our parents have the genitals of dogma.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing is that the mother was. I mean, Hackman looked like your average middle-aged guy, and she was a glamour puss.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, but she knew him when he was the Duke.
Yeah,
that's that sex stud Gene Hackman going there shagging around Europe in the 60s. That's a whole other thing.
Well, no, I got that, but I mean, they aged irregularly between the two of them.
Sure. Well, he's working in a Yumbalard. That's going to take it out of you.
Well, when you were talking about Ma Kettle before, I mean, this movie wouldn't work if his mother looked like Marjorie Main.
No, that's true. I mean, I guess
he'd be like, take her. I'm staying here.
Take her. I'm here.
To be fair, did Gene Hackman ever really look young? I feel like he's kind of like Tommy Lee Jones.
It's like Tommy Lee Jones, yeah, I was going to say. Yeah.
Whereas the girl that played the hitchhiker was 35 in this movie.
What?
You could have told me she was 20 and I would have believed you.
You could have told me she was 17 and I would have believed it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, that's good genes right there.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other Gene.
Yeah, bad Gene.
Yeah.
Let's get to the likes. Let's talk about things we liked. Again, Scott, you're up first. Something you want to focus on about the film, character, act, scene that you liked.
So because when you offered me Target, I saw it, of course, and I said, well, I kind of remember Matt Dillon from the 80s, so I watched a lot of Matt Dillon movies because of this afterwards. Like Rumblefish, which is an awful picture, but he's really good.
Yeah.
And The Outsiders and things like that. And I'm surprised at what a deft performer Matt Dillon is, and I'm kind of shocked that he's gone. So I really liked Matt Dillon in this movie. I thought he sort of carried it more so than Hackman. And I also thought, it was of a piece of the time. So I really, it was, if you write series fiction, I read a lot of series books. If you write series fiction, you do that. You read series fiction because you want to revisit old friends. And slipping into a movie like Target is really comfortable. And so it was kind of like visiting old friends. I remember the Cold War. I remember what spy movies were like. I remember what movies in the middle of the 80s are like. So what I liked about it was just how well it fit. It sort of fit like, your favorite sports coat that you've had for 40 years.
Well, it felt like it was taking like all of the elements of the Cold War storytelling, the spy fiction of that time, and just making it feel normal and just natural. Whereas like if you watch a movie made now, set in this time period, they are like slapping you upside the head of like, here are the mark posts for what a Cold War story is.
Right.
Whereas here it's just like comfortable pajamas being put on. You're like, okay, we can relax. Obviously all this stuff is happening concurrently with this movie being produced, all the Checkpoint Charlie and East West Berlin, all that stuff, but it just feels so natural versus recreated.
Yeah, it's a meat and potatoes movie. It's one of those movies that you like. It's a rainy Sunday. Like, I want to be entertained. I don't want to, and that's what I like about it. It's such a comfortable picture. It's like, you ever seen North Sea Hijacker, folks? The Roger Moore picture.
I've seen it.
All right,
many moons
not
ago.
by any stretch of the imagination a great movie, an incredibly comfortable movie. You just slip into that like it's your favorite pair of PJs, and that's what I like about this movie. It's offering you time with friends, and I like it.
It's not a Cold War; it's a cozy war.
It's a cozy war. Yes.
I think the people in East Berlin would probably disagree with me right now. I'm going to get some letters, but
how dare you?
I had to eat turnips for 8 years. That's all I had. Sorry, guys. You're here now. It's great. I think for me, I was going to talk about Hackman and Dillon because I think both put in good performances. And having seen a bad performance of Gene Hackman recently, it was nice to see him in this where he was giving a little bit more.
What was the bad performance?
I recently watched Company Business, which came out in 91.
Okay.
Another forgotten spy film, which we'll talk about in the future. I'll leave that there as a little tease. But I wanted to say that there actually are some decent set pieces in this film. I did take the mickey and say there's a very slow driving sequence, which there is.
Which one? There was two of them.
The driving sequences or the good set pieces?
The driving sequences. Are you talking about the first or the second?
The first one.
Okay, yeah, the one where they're being tailed by the protection guy.
When they're in traffic, and it's kind of like they are basically going the speed limit.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, riveting. No, the one that there's a couple of fun moments. There's a moment in the airport where like you sort of see that the Liam Neeson Taken training or the Jason Bourne training in Gene Hackman, where he like just sort of basically kung fu's the guy, shoots the other guy, takes the guy's gun, whatnot, and just like ninjas his way through something, and then just subtly walks out with a gun in an airport. Like that's quite nice to see. But the thing for me is that whole set piece. I think it was in Hamburg, where they're running over bridges, driving bridges, jumping in the water. Like it's a very involved sequence. Now I don't at any point think Gene Hackman was particularly in that water, but
Well, I don't know. When the
I think
interview
there is a shot of
watched,
him in it. Oh, go
in
on.
the interview I watched, they asked him about that, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that was me." I think he was taking credit for a stuntman's diving into the water personally, but the interviewer says, "Oh, do you do that just authenticity or ego?" And Gene Hackman's like, "Oh, it's ego. You want to think you can still do it."
I appreciate that. But I think that was a good. Like I've not seen that set piece before. I've seen someone dropping off of a bridge onto a boat. I think I've seen it in a couple of films. I think including a Taken film and a Jason Bourne film. But I think this is an interesting thing put together. And it was also done on location in Hamburg, I think, and it looked pretty good. It was where some of the money had been spent in this film.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely tell that there was an effort to create set pieces and using their locations. Like there's the one where it's like Gene Hackman it's in that water, section where he's winds up in the water later, but with him just like jumping off the lookout onto the boat.
Yeah.
And it felt like a stuntman jumping from a lookout onto a boat. It didn't feel, synthetic. It felt like they were working in a real location to make it feel cool and interesting.
Something tangible, which we lose a lot now through doubling and CGI and all that sort of stuff. Whereas at some point that was Gene Hackman, and then there was a body double that looked a lot like Gene Hackman. And
it was a real
tangible
person
about that. Yeah, it was a real person.
Yeah.
I always go back to Timothy Dalton talking about the sequence at the end of Living Daylights where the guy's dangling off the back of the airplane on the like the ropes or whatever
Cargo
it
net,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. Like a lot of that. Oh no, actually I take it back. I think it's another scene in License to Kill where he's like hanging off of a helicopter at the start or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he insisted that was him.
Right.
Because people need to see him to believe. And I just think that there is something tangible about it that we have lost. And despite this film's flaws, which we'll talk about, it does have that tangible feel. Like there is, I do think Gene Hackman was in the water at some point. I do think Matt Dillon was driving that car.
So Scott, you were mentioning, your likes being Hackman and Dillon. I think something to me that was noteworthy was like Gene Hackman, we've seen in The Package. We're going to see in more things like Company Business. And then some like really great stuff like Conversation or Enemy of the State. He's going to be someone we come back to. But to me, there was an actual novelty to Matt Dillon being here. Because he's giving a type of performance that we're not going to see very much. And he's not someone known for making spy movies. And I'm always kind of interested when we see a spy movie that features someone who's just not really of that world and operating within it for a movie or maybe at most two. And I thought of like Timothy Hutton in Falcon and the Snowman, who was really good in that movie. And around the same time period, might have even been the same year. And that's, again, an actor who's not known for spy films. And so, like, to me, that was where the interesting energy came from. Because Hackman, we know he can do this in his sleep. We've seen him do it in his sleep in a different movie. But here, it was actually the draw of Matt Dillon. That's why I was a little frustrated that he kept being sidelined as opposed to kind of being organically worked into what Hackman was doing throughout the movie.
And I think, like, quite refreshingly, Dillon's character never becomes a good spy.
Yeah, which I liked, yeah.
Yeah, because you see it. It's like a dime a dozen in spy movies. It's a trope at this point of, like, a new person in the spy world, and within half an hour becomes James Bond.
It's what The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is all about. I mean,
right, yeah. Every episode, a new person sort of gets roped into it, and they're a good spy by the end. And it can be interesting. It can be fun. But a lot of the times, it's like, should they be doing this as accurately as they are? And in this, they don't. He's still a bumbling teenager. That's great.
Yeah, well, Maggie Grace in Taken 2 was like doing a lot more action-based stuff, and it's
throwing grenades around and stuff. Like, okay, if someone gave me a grenade, I'd be like, oh boy, hope I don't drop it. Oh no.
Yeah.
No, I think they're all great likes. The only other thing to really bring up, I think, is it's good that they shot a lot of this on location.
Oh, looks great.
Yeah.
Like I think like there is a problem here with the money spent. I think it does look a bit flat sometimes. It's all quite beige. There's not a lot of like, it doesn't like pop a lot, but it's nice, that tangible feel I was talking about before. Like they are in Western East Berlin at some point. They are in Hamburg. They are in Paris. They're like the Eiffel. Is the Eiffel Tower in it, or am I confusing it with company business?
No, it's not.
No, I was just thinking that. That's what I liked was they actually worked around not going to all the famous landmarks.
Yeah.
Because that can feel tired. And you know what? This is 85. This is the year of View to a Kill. Bond is already at the Eiffel Tower. You know, Mayday is parachuting off of it. So it's kind of fun that they kind of work more in like back alleys and hotels and stuff like that into this movie and not make it feel like they're trying to go big over the top spy movie, just trying to go more grounded. I think that works for it. I did have to think though, as I was watching this, you know, this and View to a Kill, 85. Is 85 the year of like the elderly gentleman spy film?
I'd have to go and look that up. I wonder if it is. Like, who else? Wait, what year was The Return of the Man from U.N.C.L.E.?
It's 80. Is that 83?
Is it 83?
I think it may have been 86, maybe?
I think it's 83, because I think it might be the same year as Octopussy and Never Say Never Again.
Okay, well, while you look that up, because I couldn't help but notice, it's like every operative that he goes up against is about, 50, 60 years old. There are no young people involved in this espionage, and it's such a contrast to nowadays where as soon as you see CIA, like, hitmen going out on the field, they're like, 25, 30 years old and, like, built to the nines.
1983.
Yeah, it was 1983. I just to add to your point though, I just looked up some of the other spy movies in 85, and one that connects well to this is Gotcha, by the way.
Sure, yeah.
Same year as this, and you got another guy.
Is that the Tom Holland picture?
Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
Yeah, Cloak and Dagger was Tom Holland.
Tom Holland.
That's
sorry,
the year
okay,
before. Yeah.
But there are some old man movies this year. I mean, Spies Like Us.
Sure.
You've got the Holcroft Covenant, which is Michael Caine.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. Invasion USA is not quite that.
No.
KGB: The Secret War, which stars, I think, one of the guys who plays M, off the top of my head.
Robert Brown?
Bernard Lee.
Oh, it doesn't play M. He plays the Russian version that he's in every single film.
Oh, the Gogol character.
Yeah.
Walter Kotel. I think Kotel.
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like the lead in that one. So there are quite a few old man spy movies going around this year.
Yeah.
Though View to a Kill in this one really felt like they stood out because, not a lot of... maybe that's the reason the action is not particularly, hyperkinetic.
Maybe. And also, like, action was still kind of going through an evolution. We'd had, like, French Connection and stuff, I think, by this point. But, we hadn't had the Schwarzeneggers turn up particularly. I guess he's around, but, like, have we had, like, those big action films really at this point?
No, and actually, this is the same year. I mentioned it earlier, Death Wish 3. So, like, Charles Bronson stuff is still really popular. And Arnold is around. I think it's Red Sonja comes out in 85. But he's not.
When's like Predator and all that? And, like,
Those are a little later.
87.
87.
Right.
87's the big Arnold year with Running Man and Predator. But he does do Terminator in 84. So we're kind of at that point where
starting to diverge.
Yeah, but he's the villain there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about European locations. Even though it's not stellar, that's a vanished Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're looking at the Europe of Target, there's as much distance between us now and Target as there would have been between Target and a spy movie in the 30s.
Right.
And that was a vanished Europe in the 80s. And I think you would be hard pressed to go around Hamburg and find parts that look like that.
Oh, for sure. Like the whole place has evolved. It's been 40 years since that film. Yeah. This is is this the anniversary year for this film? I didn't even think of that.
It is actually, yes.
Celebrating 40 years of Target, everyone. Welcome aboard.
Hitting the mark after all these years.
Yeah, we finally got something right. Cam, I don't think you've given us a like. Why don't you?
It was when the movie tried to go a little deeper. It was like the Lise character talking to like Matt Dillon about her regrets. It was those moments where Gene Hackman is, encountering the guy that was hunting him, Schroeder, played by Herbert Berghof, and just talking about like the nature of changing espionage and, the regrets because, the Schroeder character, his entire family was killed in Operation Clean Sweep and how that's haunted him. The idea of characters talking about the past and how it had changed them as people, I was like, that felt like Arthur Penn, like really pushing the writers to like deepen that stuff because it interested him. And that's where, to me, I was like, this is what the movie could be. Like, because I don't think this is a top tier action movie, but when it tries to push organic character work, it really clicks with me. And it just felt like it wasn't quite doing it enough.
It feels like bits like that is it's trying to take it's trying to paint a bigger picture with it. Like there's something deeper to this story, whereas it doesn't necessarily actually want to commit to that the rest of the time.
Yeah, because the relationship with the mom does not feel like anything that would exist within like the relationships in the rest of the movie.
No, and like, you know, rarely do we see someone escape the world of espionage so successfully. People are always wanting to get out,
Yeah,
and they never seem to be able to. Whereas Gene Hackman basically got away for 20 years, and then got pulled back into it just because someone wanted to go shagging around Europe.
yeah, yeah. And there's that great scene where it's Gene Hackman just talking to the Lise character about like their past.
If I could have had another go at it, you know, we would have been together and stuff like that. And like your son has to hear that, which is the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't had you.
It does make you wonder about their marriage, doesn't it?
No.
Yeah. Well, it probably doesn't bode well for the future for them.
No.
To be fair, I think she was buggering off to Europe anyway. So there's like a scene right at the beginning where she's saying he should have come with her. And he's saying, no, he's got to do work or whatever. But I felt there was a tiny bit more to that. Like, he wasn't ready to let go of whatever it was. And she was sort of done with where they were.
Oh.
See, I interpreted that as he thought it was too dangerous because he had too many enemies there. Like,
I didn't get that until, like, obviously learning about his connections later. You can fill that blank. But in that moment, you don't know about his European escapades. So you have to just kind of take it on what's presented to you, which I would take as, you know,
he's dull.
I like our life here. Why do we need to change?
Mm-hmm.
Last like, and that is, I've seen a bunch of films about Europe at this point. And the ones I'm specifically reaching for are this, Gotcha, and Eurotrip. So I think now I have the perfect summer holiday planned. I may come back with the odd venereal disease.
Oh my.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Agents, where are you? Why do you hide? Follow that Patreon trail and make Spyhards your guide.
That's right. From Spy TV reviews covering the antics of George Smiley, Jack Bauer, and the Slow Horses to reviews of non-spy movies from your favorite spy actors, there's no more secrets over on our Patreon. But Cam, tell the listeners about this week's top secret broadcast.
Well, Scott, forget about your worries and your strife because we are kicking off Animated April with 1967's The Jungle Book. Is Walt Disney's adaptation of Rudyard Kipling's beloved novel one of the bare necessities? We're gonna find out.
So deactivate Ghost Protocol and visit patreon.com/spyhards to truly do things angel style.
But before we close Channel D, on with the Spy Jinx.
Okay, dislikes, and there's probably a few to talk about, but I think we've kind of covered a couple of them. But Scott, is there something you'd like to critique about the film that you haven't already?
The climax where they're getting her out of the chair just seemed a little flaccid to me. I mean, and they just essentially walk outside and the place blows up. And even though it's not an action film in the sense of action films today, or even action films in the 80s, it did seem that the ending needed just a little extra push, I thought.
I think it was choreographed badly.
Yeah.
I think you don't know why there's that guy in the corner, and you don't know why the Dillon and the other spy who turns out to be the turncoat, the big bad of it all, is walking around doing circles. And then you've also got like the most tensionless bomb diffusal I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
That doesn't help. And then when they go to walk away from this, you've got Dillon and Hackman both trying to carry one woman. And by the fact that they're both trying to carry her, it's actually harder.
Right.
It's really awkward looking. I just wish Dillon had just picked her up and ran with her, because he certainly could. He's a fit young man. And that bugged the hell out of me. But yeah, overall, I think it's a really weak ending.
Yeah, it's like, I shouldn't be watching the movie going like, man, Octopussy made a bomb defusing so much more tense.
And in a circus tent.
Yeah, in a circus tent
Yeah.
where you know
Him
Bond's not
dressed
going to
like
get
a
blown
clown.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
dressed as a clown. And it's like, like John Glenn, I like a lot, I really love a lot of his Bond movies, but I don't think he's at the tier of like Arthur Penn as a director. And yet somehow he's far better at staging a sequence like that than Arthur Penn is here.
Well, I think what Penn's going for here is something a bit deeper, but really what you needed in that scene was the whole like sweat dripping down the brow as you're trying to defuse the bomb, as there's another ticking bomb walking behind you as your son's about to get killed.
Yeah.
That's what you're meant to be getting from it, but I don't think they really sell that Gene Hackman is potentially not going to be able to defuse the bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Like you believe immediately that he's got it, so it's just a matter of watching him do it. And you also don't know why Dillon is walking around the back because you don't know the turncoat is the turncoat.
Oh, if you don't know the turncoat is a turncoat, you've been asleep since reel one.
I will argue against you. I think this film does a really bad job of getting a point across about who the villains are. I think there is 30 minutes until there's any mention of a villain particularly. And yes, you can pick up on cues that this guy knows too much about him and like doesn't know the names and stuff like that. There is bits there. There are the tiniest of crumbs, but there is no major antagonist in this film.
No, there's no antagonist the way there is in a Bond film, certainly.
No. Did you pick up that the hitchhiker was an enemy agent, Scott? Either Scott.
Oh no! Until she
Really?
like pulled out the knife or whatever. I was just like, I just thought she liked to have sex.
Really?
Oh wait! Are you talking about the woman who held the gun on
Dylan.
The one who he met in the airport.
The second
Yeah.
she's in it.
Oh, well, okay. I guess this is why I'm going to end up with venereal diseases because I'm going to get like quite easily like bamboozled by people because I trust too easily.
I think me and Scott McCrea are going to do quite well in the field.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Trust. People shake my hand. I count my fingers. I mean, I trust nobody.
I just end up with gonorrhea. Well, I guess I'll jump in with my dislike, and it kind of builds off of that a little bit, that end scene, and that is throughout this, the whole point is that Gene Hackman's wife has been kidnapped.
Yeah.
So I counted the amount of minutes she's in this film,
Okay.
and it's 6.
Yeah.
So I was actually going to guess 9, but okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of seconds change, so you can maybe argue for 7. But basically, she's in a scene at the beginning, and they drop her off at the airport, and then they awkwardly carry her out of a building that explodes. That's it. And that is your, like, person you're trying to go back and fight for. That's like what the protagonists are fighting for. Their mother, their wife, their life. And I don't want to keep comparing it to Taken, but at least Taken had the wherewithal. Peter Morrell and all of his, I don't know who the hell this guy is, the director, like, would cut in shots of Maggie Grace being sold into prostitution, being like bid on by like shady blokes, and like being given drugs and being captured and all that sort of stuff. You don't even see the woman get captured.
Right.
She just off screen is captured. And I just think, like, I understand you want this to be sort of a buddy thing between father and son. I do get that. But for goodness sake, give me a little bit about what happened to the woman, and also maybe like a phone call throughout where she's on the phone like, I'm okay, they've got me, I'm here, oh, and then they grab her and like wheel her away, and you have a little bit of like that ramping up of, and also like twisting the guts of Gene Hackman, like, I've got your wife, here she is, no, fuck you, I'm going to take her away again. It just adds a little bit to it, but also not having a villain for the most part doesn't help that either, because you can't have that phone call with a villain saying, I have your wife, if you don't know who the villain is.
Yeah, she's the MacGuffin, really.
Yeah.
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 Were they? Maybe like I'm trying to look at it from the point of view of maybe what they were trying. Were they trying for something more realistic where you wouldn't be getting those phone calls, and they wanted to strip away the cliches?
Maybe, but like at least show the kidnapping.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It just feels weird to cast someone, give her a line, and then just remove her from the film entirely. Like,
Well,
have a flashback where he dreams about her and like, or where she gets killed or something. Like, give me something so I care more about the wife. Because apart from the fact that it is my protagonist's husband, wife, and mother, I don't know this woman.
And you don't at the end either, because she doesn't really get a chance to speak.
No, No, I think that is a major failing of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's me. Cam, what about you?
Well, kind of the pace and lack of tension were my numero unos, but honestly, like I thought that Josef Sommer as Tabor, the guy who's behind it all, the secret, double agent, just did not work. I thought he was like a complete milquetoast performance, and I don't really know this actor very well. Like, maybe he's popped up in some things I like. I don't really know. He was in Witness. Witness is a good movie. Nobody's Fool with Paul Newman. Really good movie. So maybe he's been very good elsewhere, but in this movie, he just doesn't have the presence to really work. And I felt like every time they were putting him in a room with Gene Hackman, it was like Gene Hackman was just blowing him off the screen. And it just, you want to feel something. Like, you want to feel like this guy may not be as formidable as Gene Hackman, but you want to feel like there's something, whether it's an intellect, whether it's, I don't know, something, like a sense of power. None of it came across, and I just was left with, like, one of the more generic villains we've run into on this show.
This is going to sound ridiculous, but when I was watching it, I kept on thinking about Hopscotch.
Which I haven't seen.
Oh, okay. Which is a terrific Walter Matthau spy comedy. And, he's a spy who's, kind of past his prime. And his opposite number is Herbert Lone.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually have the feeling that they knew each other and they were spies against each other, but there was this sense that there was this camaraderie. And that's entirely missing here in Target.
Right.
And to your point, I think, if there was a sense that, like, we're frenemies, or, you did this to me, so I'm getting back at you. But it's sort of like this, anonymous German accent comes out of nowhere. It says, I evacuate myself on you. Yeah. It's like, there's no real payoff.
No, I felt like the actor who played Schroeder had so much more presence. Yeah. And that's a crucial role, and you want someone with presence for that big reveal in the greenhouse. But, like, if that guy had been the villain, it probably would have clicked a little more. And then there's the other guy that's set up as the red herring, who's kind of the, I guess, second in command to Tabor. And, like, that guy also cannot really deliver.
No, he just falls into the background of the film. He's basically barely there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the whole villain thing just fails for me. Like, I think it would have been better if we'd known maybe a little bit before. I know you're saying you had an inkling, both guys. Maybe I'm just behind the 8 ball here, but I think it wasn't that overt as it should be. There should have been perhaps more breadcrumbs that would have led you to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's just go to any final notes we've got. I've only got the one, maybe two. Cam, have you got anything?
I had a couple, and they were both really right off the top of the movie. Number one was the True Value lumber place looked like the police station from Twin Peaks. When they showed that counter, I was like, oh my God, it looks exactly like Twin Peaks, the police station, with the receptionist desk.
Keep your eye on the donut.
And also, connected to that, it's like seconds later, Gene Hackman's out driving, and there is a sign for a business called, I think, What About? Which I wasn't familiar with.
It's Whataburger. It's Whataburger.
The logo is exactly like the Wonder Woman logo.
And also the Weezer logo.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't realize how close the similarity was between those things.
I'm sure Whataburger has had to fight litigation on that at some point in their life, but they've been around for a very long time.
Well, Wonder Woman's been around since, I think, the very early 40s. So.
Well, who's coming out on top? Weezer, Whataburger, or Wonder Woman?
On top of what?
Yeah, on top of what, Scott? Wonder Woman.
And on that note,
on that note,
I was just I was blown away by a scene in this film where Gene Hackman has to go into a phone booth, which is something that doesn't exist anymore if you're young and you don't know what that is. It's where you have a phone and you have to go into a box to use it. And he talks in French. Only he doesn't, because the guy doing the dubbing sounds nothing like Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
It's painfully obvious it's not Gene Hackman. So they have to shoot him from the back and him just sort of like nodding his head as if he's talking on a phone. But he does turn around and you do hear him say, "Oui, oui."
Right.
Thanks, Gene.
Master of languages and diving into water.
I don't know if you should be in a small booth and say wee wee, but
That's true.
You might end up with one of those venereal diseases we keep getting scared about. But I just also wrote down, because their original names were the Potters,
Yes.
I wrote down Derek Potter and the Middling Spy Movie.
Sure.
You're welcome, everyone.
I do have one thing though.
Oh, you do? Go, Scott, go.
So at least for the 20th century, at least if you look at movies from every decade in the 20th century,
Mm-hmm.
people look different.
Mhm.
People in the 70s look different from people in the 80s.
Yeah.
Who look different from people in the 90s. A lot less so now, for whatever reason, I don't know. But it's impossible to look at a frame of that movie and go, oh, and not go, oh, the 80s. Like you would never mistake that for the 70s or the 90s or even the 60s if you take away things like the car. And I always found it fascinating that each decade people look different. and I don't know, where I'm even going with that, but it's impossible to see if you take, an actress from a movie from the 30s and you separate her from her milieu and you're just looking at the figure, you go, the 1930s or the 1940s. And the 80s and the 90s are really, I think, the last decade where you could do that.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I mean, nowadays, Gene Hackman, probably age-wise, in this movie would be like Ben Affleck.
Yeah, which is fascinating, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so this is 40 years ago. He was 96. So he was 55, 56 when he made this.
So Ben Affleck's a little younger than that, but
Not a lot.
by a ton. No.
Yeah.
No. I'd buy Ben Affleck in that role.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Knock list time. The reason why we assemble every week. We're not Avengers. Cam, for those tuning in for the first time, why don't you just explain what the knock list is?
Yes, the knock list is our acronym for Need to See Official Classics of the Spyhards podcast, where every week after we talked about a movie, we debate whether it belongs on the list of the all-time great spy films. The list of films you could give any person new to the genre that are the essentials.
So we have to vote now whether this makes that sacred list. Only a few films have made it over our 200 reviews. And Scott, you get a vote. Your vote is first. Guests always go first. It's your first time up on the knock list. So yes or no, should Target hit the target?
Can I say no with a caveat?
You can.
No with a caveat. But again, if you just want to get an idea of what spy movies in the 80s are like, you can't go wrong. But is this certainly The Third Man or Octopussy or From Russia with Love or Five Fingers? No, not even close.
It does have a tuk-tuk, though.
It does have a tuk-tuk.
You mentioned Five Fingers in this review. You're a man of many talents and great taste.
Oh, it's a great film.
And that made the knock list.
Yeah.
Oh, James Mason movie made the knock list. It's amazing.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Okay, one no, all still to play for. Cameron, you're up.
No, it's a no for me as well. And I, would like to put a Gene Hackman film on the knock list. I think we will one day, most likely.
There's certainly a couple of chances. I'm sure we'll have a conversation about it.
Yes. And, the package did not, and I don't think this one does either. I would actually put this a hair below the package.
Yeah.
But you know what? There are going to be worse ones coming up too.
Yes. Maybe not in the not so distant future. Maybe a ways away, but there is more Gene Hackman of many different flavors to come. 2 no's, my turn, and it's a no. If you want to watch Taken, go watch Taken.
Sure.
There are nuances to this. There is perhaps a bit more depth to this film than there is Taken, but I think it's let down by bad action a lot of the time. I think it's let down by a lack of a villain, and it's let down by a pacing issue. We haven't spoken about too much, but like the second act is basically a lot of sleepiness. And I've only seen it the once, but I don't think I would want to track this one down again. So for me, it's a no. And as such, 3 no's. Target is not making the knock list. The dossier on the film is complete and filed as classified. And there we go.
Boom.
Before we sign off, Scott, this is your first time on Spyhards podcast. I hope you've had a good time on Spyhards podcast. It's been great having you here.
I hope it's the first of many.
For sure. Well, I think now is an opportune time. We spoke about it at the start, but where can people find your books? I mean, there will be a link in the show notes below, but where do you recommend people to go? Where do you recommend people to go find out more about you, and where can people find you on the social media?
Well, they can find me on X or whatever it's called these days at Scott McCrea West. They can find me at scottmccrea.net, and they can find me on Instagram at Scott McCrea West. And they could buy Targets West, my new spy thriller, at Amazon, and or it can be ordered through Barnes and Noble or whatever. So it's anywhere you want. But if you're thinking of building a new addition to your house, buy multiple copies of Targets West and build it with that, like Pee-wee's Playhouse.
I'll start replacing my copies of Little Drummer Girl that are
please.
holding up this place.
Oh God! So I hate that movie with a passion, and the book is not much better. So.
Oh. Okay.
You and Nicholas Meyer would have to go head to head on that one, I think, because he is a big fan.
Oh, really?
Okay. Of the book.
Of the book, not the film. He's very specific about that. Scott, it's been a pleasure. I recommend everyone goes and checks out the book. There will be a link in the show notes below. Make it happen. Go follow Scott online. Plenty of spy jinx to be had, but we'll be talking online all week. So if you find our post, you'll find Scott too as well. We'll post about the book as well. Not a problem. Scott, it's been great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
There you go, folks. That was our chat about Target. I want to thank Scott McCrea for making the journey onto Spyhards podcast. It was amazing to have you on. You were a cracking guest, and you joined the Hall of Fame of Scots that have been on the show over the years. We seem to have had quite a few.
Yeah, it's definitely a much more popular name for spy aficionados than Cam.
Yeah, have we encountered a Cam?
Not yet, only Cameron Diaz.
And what a time that was.
Charlie's Angels, 1 and 2.
We're just forgetting about Back in Action, I assume.
Charlie's Angels, 1 and 2.
I knew you'd say that. Well, yeah, it was great talking Target, and also great to just talk about Gene Hackman, obviously, in the light of his passing recently. Just, I mean, I know it wasn't the best film to sort of hold up as a Gene Hackman film, but he did good in the film. It was nice to talk about it. We'll have some bigger Gene Hackman films down the road, I'm sure.
Yes, and also the most notable spy movie would be The Conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a lot of other podcasts doing that movie in the wake of his passing. So we were actually doing something a little different, focusing on a movie that maybe people haven't seen 1,000 times, and one that maybe we could shine some light on.
Yeah, that's kind of the Spyhards way, going all the way back to our Spyhards Die Hard review at the start, talking about some of the films we drudged up over the years. That's exactly what we like doing here, is maybe not looking at the obvious ones, but our mission is to watch all spy movies of all time. I'm not sure we'll ever do it, but we'll try. And we're talking about films that aren't popular. And Target is not a popular film. I don't think anyone's made a podcast about this, or maybe one or two podcasts over the years have, but certainly not the amount of people that have talked about The Conversation.
Or Enemy of the State, yeah.
Sure. Both of which we've never spoken about.
That's right.
Coming soon. And speaking of coming soon, what a segue. Cameron, the question goes to you. What are we talking about next week?
Well, this movie we tackled was released in 1985, and next week we're going to look at an adaptation of a TV show that was probably running in 1985, and that is The Equalizer. We are going to kickstart this franchise with the 2014 original starring Denzel Washington.
Yeah, we've been waiting to do this one for quite a while. A lot of you have asked about The Equalizer, and I think it's about time. Denzel did wonderful work in Gladiator 2. And he's been on everyone's lips recently. There's been talk of there being an Equalizer 4 and 5. So we thought, hey, let's kick off a new franchise. Let's talk about The Equalizer. And we've also got a Spy Master interview for you next week as well to go alongside it.
We do indeed, yeah.
But I'll save that till next week's episode, so you can tune in and find out more about that. So your mission, folks, should you choose to accept it, is to join us next week as we take a look at 2014's The Equalizer. And if you like what you heard on this episode, please consider joining us over on our Patreon. I know you hear me say it from time to time. There's always a cheeky ad in the middle of the show. But genuinely, anyone who can spare a dime, spare a nickel, spare a pound, spare a dollar, to come and join us over there and help support Spyhards, you're genuinely helping the show, helping us keep the lights on. Me and Cam aren't in this to make profit. We're not in this to start a new business. All of your money goes back into the show. And it costs a lot to run a podcast, more than you'd think. And we wanted to give you the best version of the show possible. So every person who gets involved just helps the show get better.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And of course, as well as supporting the show financially, you're unlocking a ton of bonus episodes, over 100 bonus episodes available on Patreon. Find out more about that, patreon.com/Spyhards. There'll be a link in the show notes below. And frankly, we'd love to see you.
Plus, there's more Gene Hackman coverage there. We've talked about the French Connection. We've talked about Superman 1 and 2. And there'll be more Hackman content, I'm sure, in the future.
Couldn't think of a better way of selling it, Cam. Well said. Hopefully we'll see you all over there soon. And speaking of seeing us, you can see us on social media at Spyhards, wherever you might social your medias. X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads. We're basically everywhere like good spies should be. But until next week, folks, Cam and I are desperately heading back to Spyhards HQ to do some research and see if we can find a film to finally finish our 80s Tuk Tuk trilogy.